The history of the United States is filled with accounts of haunted locations and buildings. We've seen the lists that every ghost enthusiast is supposed to see. The Limp Mansion, the Winchester Mystery House, the Whaley House, Myrtle's Plantation. The lists go on and on. But what about the lesser-known haunted locations? It may be a local remote haunt, maybe just off the beaten path, but many of them are just as haunted. I'm Jordan White. Join us today as we look into the lesser-known haunted houses of America. Nemacolin Castle, overlooking the Monongahela River in Brownsville, Pennsylvania, is Nemacolin Castle, which was once a famous site on the old National Road. The three-story mansion with its ramparts and turret actually predates the town and was built on the site of Fort Byrd, a garrison from the French and Indian War. The castle was built by Jacob Bowman, a local businessman who owned a nail factory and a paper mill and was later a postmaster, justice of the peace, and bank president in Brownsville. As his wealth grew, so did his family. After he fathered 9 children with his wife Isabella, he decided to build the mansion, which was completed in the early 1800s. In the years that followed, the house was not only a family home, but also a stop on the Underground Railroad. It remained in the Bowman family until it was eventually donated to the local historical society, who maintains it today. Over the last few decades, the house has gained a reputation as one of the most haunted spots in western Pennsylvania. Staff and visitors to the castle have reported strange happenings, from heavy footsteps to slamming doors, the erratic flashing of lights, and full-bodied apparitions. The ghost of a little girl, who is normally seen in the middle part of the house, has been reported at least a dozen times over the past decade. Others have cited a small boy, a stern-looking older woman, a ghostly dog, and an older man who is believed to be Jacob Bowman himself. McCune Mansion, located on the Capitol Hill district of Salt Lake City, Utah, is the McCune Mansion. Built by South Utah Railroad owner and business tycoon Alfred McCune in 1900 at the cost of over $1 million. Born to a British officer and his wife in Calcutta, India, McCune immigrated with them to Utah Territory after they joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. By the time he was 21, McCune had become a highly successful railroad builder and was connected to other millionaires of the era. He was a partner in the Peruvian Cerro de Paso mines along with J.P. Morgan, William Randolph Hearst, and Frederick William Vanderbilt. McCune wanted his home to be an extravagant display of his wealth and financed a 2-year tour of Europe for architect S.C. Dallas so that he could obtain design ideas. The new home towered over the surrounding streets and no expense was spared. It was constructed from red Utah sandstone, and other materials and furnishings were imported from around the world. McCune and his wife lived in the home until 1920. Prior to moving to Los Angeles, California, they donated it to the LDS Church and it became the McCune School of Music. In the early 1950s, the mansion became Brigham Young University Salt Lake City Center until 1972, when it was moved to a larger location. It was sold in 1973 and became the Virginia Tanner Modern Dance School. Since the building has been privately owned and operated as a reception center for weddings and other events. The hauntings began soon after the McCunes moved out. Since then, the list of strange reports has continued to grow. Under the stairs is a room that was once used for music practice, and although this is no longer its purpose, music is still heard coming from within. 2 apparitions have been seen in the house. The first is a man in the long black coat. The second, a young girl who resembles a portrait still hanging in the house. She has been seen walking in and out of the mirror in the west end of the mansion. The other reports involved items being moved, furniture being rearranged after leaving a room, flickering lights, and doors that unlock and lock themselves. Tinker Cottage. The Tinker Swiss Cottage in Rockford, Illinois stands today as one of the most unusual homes in the state. It was built by Robert Tinker, an unusual man in his own right. Born on December 31st, 1836 in Honolulu, Hawaii, to missionary parents, Robert came to Rockford in 1856. He was employed as an accountant by Mary Dorr Manny, the wealthy widow of John H. Manny of the Manny Reaper Works. His inspiration for his amazing cottage came during his tour of Europe in 1862, where he fell in love with the architecture of Switzerland. In 1865, after returning to Illinois, he began building his 27-room Swiss-style cottage on a limestone bluff overlooking Kent Creek. He surrounded his home with over 27 acres of trees, vines, winding paths, flower beds, and gardens. In 1870, Robert and Mary Manny were married and became one of Rockford's most influential couples. Tinker became mayor of Rockford in 1875, was a founding member of the Rockford Park District, and the CEO of Northwest and IC Railroad lines. Mary died in 1901, and Robert later remarried to her niece, Jessie Dorr Hurd. When Robert died in 1924, Jessie created a partnership with Rockford Park District, allowing her to stay in the house until her death in 1924. The Park District then acquired the property and opened the home as a museum in 1943. Over the years, visitors and staff have experienced the hauntings here firsthand, from the sound of footsteps in the hallways and on the stairs to the sound of voices and songs being hummed throughout the house. Even skeptical staff have been convinced of the haunting as they hear things they cannot explain and have seen objects moved by unseen hands. Taliesin. Located in Green Spring, Wisconsin in Taliesin, a former summer home that belonged to its designer, Frank Lloyd Wright. It has become famous as one of the finest examples of its signature prairie-style architecture. But what most people don't know is that it was also the scene of a heinous crime in 1914 that left a haunting in its wake. Wright began building the house in 1911. Soon after leaving his first wife and 6 children, he had been involved in a scandalous affair with Mama Borthwick Cheney, the wife of one of his clients. She left her husband to move to Spring Creek while Taliesin was under construction. Although Mama did not have custody of her 2 children, they were spending the day with her on August 15, 1914. Wright was in Chicago, supervising the construction of another project. While Mama and her children were eating lunch with several other workmen in the dining room, a servant named Julian Carlton, who had been fired earlier that day, locked them in the house, poured gasoline under the door, and set the house on fire. As the people inside tried to get out, Carlton attacked them with a hatchet, killing 7 people, including Mama and her children. The tragedy destroyed the majority of Taliesin and most of the records of Wright's early work. Wright received a telegraph in Chicago and rushed to Wisconsin, only to find the mansion and his wife in ruins. Determined not to be defeated by this terrible turn of events, Wright rebuilt the mansion in Mama's honor. But bizarrely, the second house also met with tragedy. In April 1925, a lightning storm started a second fire and it burned to the ground. Wright built a third incarnation of Taliesin on the same site, and it has survived to this day. Taliesin is one of the most visited homes in the country and allegedly the most haunted. After the murderous affairs of 1914, the bodies of the victims were taken to a cottage on the property called Tan y Deary. It is here where Mama's ghost has been seen and heard, usually dressed in a long white gown. It is also said that the doors and windows open and close on their own, and within the cottage objects move and lights turn on and off of their own volition. The events of the past have truly marked the house as a haunted place that will forever be linked to the tragedy of long ago. That's all for today's episode. If you liked it, hit the like button and subscribe. If you have something else you want us to cover, let us know in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, let us know, what do you fear?